All right, so as you guys can tell by the title of the video, today we're gonna be looking at board slides. We're gonna be looking at front side and back side. But the reason that this is coming about is that same community post that I made just a few weeks ago. I think we're gonna do tail slides next, and then maybe we'll look into doing another flip trick. There was a handful of flip tricks recommended. If there's anything that you guys wanna see, make sure to drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys wanna see. I'm more than willing to make a tutorial on almost anything I know how to do, as long as I feel like I know how to do it well enough that I can tell somebody how to do it. Remember to drop a like and sub, and let's get into the video. All right, so first things first, what should you learn board slides on? I would highly recommend learning them on a rail. If you want to learn them on a ledge, they're good for other reasons, but at the end of the day, I think they're much easier to learn on a rail, specifically a square rail if you have access to one. While you're going to want to learn how to do them on a round rail in the future, specifically learning them on a square rail is going to give you a little bit more balance if you're just starting out or just trying to figure out the trick. So one of the reasons you don't want to really learn them on ledges. Ledges are a pretty good way to learn how to get into them, but the balance is different between a ledge and a rail, because when you're sliding on a ledge, you're actually sliding your wheels. So you have to put a lot more pressure on the side that's sliding versus on a rail where the balance point is a little bit different. So prerequisites to learning a board slide. These aren't always required, but they're going to help you and give you a much larger jump start on the trick. You can learn them without having the prerequisites very good, but you're gonna have a much harder time. So I would highly recommend working on the prerequisite tricks before you go to board slides. Ollies and 180s. If you can have a good ollie and a good 180, you're going to be able to do a board slide. And that's why this is a very simple trick for people to figure out, very good trick for people to learn. It's kind of like that with slides and grind tricks in general. There's not a whole lot of prerequisites, because especially when you're dealing with the fundamentals, you're trying to learn the fundamental movements of each trick. But with board slides, a good solid 180 is going to help you out. All right, so this is good because it leads us straight into how to get into the trick. Basically, all you're doing is you're doing a 90. You're doing half of a 180. If you do a full 180 and land 50-50 and you're just starting, you're crazy. The whole idea is to just poke your front trucks over. And a lot of people learn front side before they learn backside, but backside tends to be the favored stance once people figure it out. I don't know why this is, that's how it was for me and all my friends, but I think it's good to know both. The reason I say you can get away with this trick without the prerequisites is because if you look, and if you choose a rail that's small enough, if you notice, when I pop my tail, my wheels will pretty much clear this rail without any real pop. So seriously, you just have to get like that high off the ground to get into a board slide. But to have good solid control, this is where the 180 comes in, because you want to be able to pop your 180 like you're going to do a 180, and you want to control it so that you only hit 90, right? And then you smack directly on the rail. Now, unfortunately, there's no real good way to practice this. One way that I think maybe is easier to practice, but in turn I kind of actually think is harder than just learning how to board slide, is to just roll at the rail perpendicular and pop up and kind of get into a balance. Another thing that you can do is put your board in a balanced state like this, put your foot in the middle, and you can kind of, and obviously practicing a little bit on a curb or a small ledge to get the base movements will help you out a lot. Do that. This works better on a square rail, obviously. Now you understand how to pop into a board slide. How do you balance and actually slide it? If you don't know the difference between front side and back side, basically it just means the way you approach the rail. If I'm approaching the rail and my front is facing the rail, you're doing front side. If your back is facing the rail, you're doing back side. Back side tends to be the preferred board slide and the easier board slide that most people do, but front side's also really good to learn. But basically all you want is your weight to be as centered as possible. And if the rail is really waxed, you can usually get away with your weight sitting dead center over the board. Now, the only thing you really have to counter after that is your momentum. And if you're doing front side, the way you counter your momentum, since you're gonna be moving this way, you kind of want to have a little bit of your weight toward where you came in. Let me see this. Almost like you want to flex your board down, right? Like toward the rail. So for front side, you want to be down and toward the rail, just a little bit. You don't want too much because this is how it leads to slide outs, but this is also how you counter the momentum and prevent yourself from what a lot of people would call in snowboarding catching an edge, because it's very similar. If you have too much weight back here, you're just going to stick and fly back. All right, now when it comes to backside, backside's very similar, but the beauty of backside is you can see where you're going the entire time. You can see your board go over the rail, and once you're in it, and you have a visual cue on how long the rail is. The balance is pretty similar, it's just reversed. You're gonna put most of your pressure on your heels instead of your toes. And this is gonna allow you to counter your weight, counter any sticky spots in the rail maybe. You don't want too much because you can slip out doing this, but just enough. But for the most part, you want your weight to be pretty dead center. Think of your board in a straight line. If you have your feet in a straight line and your weight is sitting right over that rail, you want your head aligned with the rail. And this goes for both front side and back side. And once you're pretty square and you can hold it, this is a really easy trick to hold because you basically just put it on and hold it as long as you can. And it's generally pretty safe. You can tell when you're gonna slip out or need to bail on a board slide, and it's really easy. You just kind of take one foot off and kick with the other one and put it down, and it's generally pretty safe. And then once you get more comfortable with board slides, it's really easy to move your weight around the rail and get kind of that leverage point to do, you know, some stupid, crazy stuff out, right? But this comes later. Really, all you need to be focusing on if you're just trying to figure out how to board slide is getting on the rail and trying to feel out how the slide works. But in general, when you're doing a board slide, you want to be sitting real square. Just have a slight bend in your knees. If you're doing backside, you want to put a little bit on your heels, front side a little bit on your toes. But not a lot. You really don't want to do a lot. Now, dismounting from a board slide is generally pretty easy. And this goes for both sides, front side and back side. All you really have to do is turn your shoulders. And the reason I say this is because when you turn your shoulders, your hips tend to follow, right? When you turn your whole body, your hips down here follow where you go, right? And thus in turn letting your feet follow. Now you can keep your feet in the same position while actuating your hips, but generally when you're first beginning, this is a really easy understanding of how to get out of the trick, because you can fall out of board slides pretty easy, and a lot of what carries you out of a board slide is speed. So that's why if you really don't want to skate with a lot of speed because you're scared of it, wax up the rail real good. You're probably going to have a little bit more slip out potential, but you're going to be able to get out of board slides a bit easier. If you have no real problem with speed, you don't need to worry too much about wax. You'll just come out of them pretty easy. And this is where 180s also come in as a prerequisite, because when you do the board slide, I pop in, I slide, and then when I come down to the end, I can either complete the rotation of the 180 by turning my shoulders toward going out to fakie, or I can cancel it because I have the balance in there and I can turn out regular. And all of that is just turning your shoulders. Now, you can get away with just sliding out, but a lot of the time you land perpendicular, and you don't want to do that. There is a little bit of a back foot actuation, a little bit of a swing when it comes to getting out of a board slide. And all you have to do is give it that little bit of a swing. You giving it that little bit of a momentum will get it out of the board slide without going to primo. All right, so common issues with board slides. The first one that comes to mind, especially for somebody who's just learning, is when they pop up and then they lock like this. They don't actually go over the rail like you're supposed to. They lock like this, and then maybe they slide and then they run out. If you're having this issue, most of that is the commitment issue. You're not doing a full 180, and you're not putting a little bit of your weight on the other side of the rail. Because remember, you want your weight to be balanced over where you're making contact on the rail. If you're not balanced over where you make contact on the rail, and you have more weight leaning to one side, you're gonna actuate to that side. It's like a giant lever. So if you're doing this, one thing I would recommend is start with your board just a little bit closer to the rail than you think you are, because you're probably starting clear out here, and when you do the 180, you're barely locking it. So start a little bit closer to the rail, pop, and make sure you get all the way over. And don't be scared to put a little bit of weight over to the other side of the rail. Once you do that, you're gonna find that balance point that's really safe. Now, another issue that I can think of with board slides is when somebody is sliding, maybe if you're sliding really, really sideways like this, Now, this is technically a board slide. It's not considered a good board slide. So what's happening when you're doing this is you're coming in at an angle and you're popping just a straight ollie. And that's okay. And sometimes that can help you understand, but you're gonna run into some pinching issues with your wheel. If you pinch it hard enough, your wheel is going to make contact with the rail, and that's gonna make you stick. You really want to have that good 180, and I cannot stress this enough. Just having a good solid 90 into the rail is going to fix 90% of your issues with the board slide. So I'm going at the rail like this. I pop in, I'm like this, I'm up on top of the rail. I'm sliding like this and I slip out. What's happening is you're letting too much of your weight get behind you. You want your weight to be dead center, your head to be over where you're making contact with on the rail. A little bit toward the heel, not a whole lot. And this is only just to counter any kind of sticking momentum that the rail may present. Because if there's a sticky spot on the rail, what's gonna happen is you're gonna catch a little bit more friction and you're gonna go forward. You're gonna go forward just a little bit. And when you go forward, that's gonna either make you stick, or if you have a little bit of your weight back, you're gonna land center and you're gonna go through it, and then you're gonna be able to reestablish control. It's the same kind of thing with backside. With backside, if you're slipping out, and this is the more common one to slip out on, if you're doing it backside and you have slip out problems, you're putting way too much weight in front of you. Since you're sliding at the rail backwards, you want a little bit of your weight toward where you came in. So you want a little bit of your weight forward, but not too much. If you put too much, you're gonna slip out. But 99% of issues with frontside and backside board slides is just simply a good solid entry into the trick, meaning a good solid 90, putting a little bit of weight over the rail, and then how you distribute the weight. So issues when it comes to dismounts. Just one that I can really think of off the top of my head that I've seen a lot is when somebody comes to the end and then they fall off like this. Basically all that's happening, you're anticipating getting out of the trick a little bit too early. You don't want to be twisting out when you get here. You want to be twisting out when you get here. Because as you saw, it just kind of fell out. So even if you don't get a good dismount from the trick, you'll still roll out of it. If you try to twist out too early, when the wheel catches right there, it makes it so the whole board goes sideways. So you want to do it pretty near the end of the rail. A lot of the dismount issues come from when you're not doing a good swing on your dismount. If you're going to primo, you're sticking right at the end, as well as, you know, maybe you fall and land perpendicular to the rail. A lot of what this is you're not doing a dismount properly. There's a little bit of a swing, and you can do it with your feet over the bolts or with your foot here or however your balance is set up. You just have a little swing. It's just a little one. You basically just push down a little bit with your back foot and let your shoulders do the work. And that little bit of momentum is going to give you enough room to get away from the rail. Now, learning dismounts on rail and ledge tricks tends to be some of the hardest things, and this will be a recurring issue as you learn more ledge and rail tricks. Learning how to get out of something is a little bit harder than learning how to get into it, in my opinion. But once you understand how the dismount works, maybe you can do it real slow, try and watch a couple video clips of me doing them here. If you have a phone, record yourself in slow motion and look and see what you're doing. A lot of just thinking about and seeing what you're doing is going to solve a lot of issues with tricks. Now, when it comes to trying to learn the other board slides like fakie, switch, or nollie, the physics is generally the same. The balance points are generally the same. Generally, the idea of how you get into the trick is always going to be the same. And there is a bit of a style factor when it comes to board slides. Some people think it's really cool to grind your base plate along the rail. This you can get pretty good at, especially if you have a solid board slide and it looks really cool on really long rails. But this just comes with control. If you want to do that, all you have to do is you have to lean a little bit over to the one side, and then once it locks, you just kind of balance it and you put your contact point there. Really cool looking though, if you can do it right. Anyway, if this video helped you figure out board slides, do them better, do your first board slide, let me know, dude. It's super cool to see people like actually take what I say and turn it into figuring out the trick. I love helping people figure out tricks. Anyway, so if you enjoyed any of this video, drop a like, drop a sub, helps out a lot. If there's any other issues or problems that you're having with board slides that maybe I didn't mention in the video, drop it in the comments below and I'll help you out as much as I can. And anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.